For me, homeopathy is the most high form of medicine. And since I have understood that, I wanted to pass the information so everybody can think and can act according to this idea. So it means a lot. I have devoted all my life to homeopathy. And I'm a man that I don't spend time in going to parties, in going to pubs, in going to cinemas. I have not been in a theater for 35 years. I have not been to see a film, you see. In television, I will not sit down and see a film in television. It's all the time. It's homeopathy and people that needing my help. Because apart from the teaching, of course, I've seen cases all the time in front of the people, and I have the follow-ups that I have to deal with. And I receive 30 to 40 cases a day in my email that I have to answer with people asking for help, etc. So all my life is concentrated and is revolving around homeopathy. When I decided to build the school here, the academy, everybody was telling me, he says, George, I mean, it's very remote, this place. But this is what I felt. It was my place. I wanted to be away and remote. And then my argument was that if a doctor wanted really to learn, he will make the journey. And this is a good test. Whoever is coming here, they want to learn to heal people, really. And I decided to have the academy here in this remote place because I felt that this healing method is really the best way to treat people and take away from them the suffering, especially the depression, the anxieties, the irritability, the anger, and all the negative emotions that a human being has.
Years ago, as I started to study psychology, I realized that helping people was my passion. Many people came to me for advice on how to deal with various situations. I noticed that people suffer from both psychological and physical health issues. And most doctors, when treating a disease, focus almost exclusively on physical health, without taking into account a psychological state of patient. And I decided that I needed to find a medical system that treats the body as whole, considering not just physical health, but also psychological and mental issues. I started to search and finally discovered homeopathy. I saw how it helps and how it works, how people change when their quality of life is improving when they start to practice homeopathy, and how their lives are getting better due to this treatment system. One of my patients was 37 years old. The woman had a bad peritoneal inflammation that later on led to a complete tubal obstruction and infertility. She came to me because no one could help her. I prescribed silicate and the patient could get pregnant. The medicine apparently resorbed all silicate in the tubes. She gave birth to a daughter. And after some time got pregnant again. However, her uterus got very flaccid by that time, and there appeared a threat of miscarriage. The woman was advised by the doctors to terminate her pregnancy. But she came back to me with tears in her eyes and asked me to help her. The cesarean she underwent made the uterine wall thin, and I prescribed silicate once again, since this medicine, it would seem, was her constitutional remedy. And the second pregnancy was successful too. This is such a cool case study. The right medicine helped two children to be born.
И мы удачно выносили даже вторую беременность. Вот такой классный случай, и благодаря этому случаю родилось 2 ребенка.
In our way of treating people, if we have a case, he says, I have no hope. That means I'm not interested in anything. I do not feel anything. I do not want anything. I just maybe, are you afraid of death? No, I'm not afraid. And there is such a deep sadness without hope that for us to resurrect this soul who is without hope is very difficult.
9 лет назад мне удалили щитовидку.
I had my thyroid removed 9 years ago, and a friend of mine introduced me to Nadezhda Kubasheva, a homeopath.
Дало положительный результат. Я занимаюсь
Her advice brought only positive results. I do sports, I work in my garden all the time, I take care of my 4 grandkids, and I don't feel old, despite being 67 years of age.
Well, hope is, I think, the divine spark that there is in all of us. Hope is to feel that one day you may be near God, you see. Even I have found out that from experience, from people confessing to me all problems, that people who had suffered a lot and who remained with a hope, they went through the suffering and they were coming out of this suffering with a lot of gain, a lot of new experience, and new if they had hope.
3 года назад мы с мужем решили, что нашей семье нужно подрасти. Вот.
3 years ago, my husband and I decided that our family needed to grow. We wanted to have a baby. But unfortunately, my first 2 pregnancies, despite all positive tests, ended in miscarriages. We consulted many good doctors, but none of them held out much hope. Then we turned to a homeopath, and half a year later, I got pregnant. To be honest, I was very nervous during the entire pregnancy, all because of my previous sad experience produced. But my pregnancy was successful, thanks to homeopathy. Nadezhda Kubasheva helped us a lot, and we had a wonderful son, who is already a year and 4 months old. My way to homeopathy was a long one too. I used to be a professional musician. I played the piano and gave many performances. I even was a soloist and sang in the church choir for 10 years. Nevertheless, I found all these activities to be quite oppressive. My mother was seriously ill. She suffered from severe chronic headaches. We called the ambulance on a regular basis. She got hospitalized many times, and doctors used to look at her lying on a hospital bed and wonder whether she would survive or not. We expected every pain episode she went through to become her final one. Each time my mother was in pain, I called our homeopath and asked to prescribe some serious medicine, because by that time I started to understand homeopathy. However, the homeopath said my mother's case was too complicated. Then I had a thought. Since other doctors cannot cure my mom, I will try and cure her on my own. So I studied my homeopathy studies and realized that homeopathy presupposes not only treating an illness, but taking the patient's state of mind and traits of character into account too. And I found this to be very interesting. My treating my mother has brought great results, with God's help, I think. And I'm happy that I do homeopathy, because it brings me much more joy than my music performances did. Now I understand that I found my calling.
My happiest, not moments, happiest, how can I say, happiest months or happiest year was when I met with homeopathy. When I started reading, I was in such an exciting state where I was feeling almost like, how can I say, like have an enlightenment, you see? I have happiness and enjoyment reading, studying the first years. So far I have been able to overcome all the obstacles. And my dream, since I came in contact with homeopathy, was that this is such a serious medical method, healing method, that belongs to the medicine, to the core of medicine, therefore should be taught in medical schools.
I am an immunologist by training. I wanted to practice immunology in order to understand the common problem of pathologies forming in either human body or any other living organism. However, my immunology studies did not give me the detailed perspective of a disease and its emergence. Once I happened to watch a cycle of video lectures in Moscow. It was the first cycle read by George Vitulkas. I sat there staring at the screen and could not believe my luck. Because I looked at a wonderful man who told about diseases in the way that exactly matched my thoughts on the pathological processes formation. I was deeply impressed, and that experience played a crucial role in my life. I started practicing homeopathy in 2006, when I got disillusioned with the treatment conventional medicine could offer. Conventional methods of curing diseases did not help my kids, and I went to study at the George Vitulkas Academy. Before my homeopathy studies, I majored in medicine at the university and spent 10 years working as an assistant and conducted research at the pathological anatomy department. Thinking about my PhD thesis, I came to the conclusion that I was able to cure cystic mastopathy by following the similarity rule. I'm very grateful to George Vitulkas for his approval of my idea. So in 2007, my students and I studied our experiment at the Medical University of Ryazan. It took us 3 years to complete the research. During that period, we conducted experiments on 200 animals and saw our methods give very good therapeutic effect in all experimental groups. Even my teacher, Professor Pyotr Chumachenko, an allopath, a morphology specialist and a co-author of this work, saw the experiment results and said, "This magic potion, Verospiron, works pretty well. It is quite unique." Then my teacher, already an elderly man at that time, started reading books by George Vitulkas. He read all of them, even the Organon, and told me, "Jana, it's great that you turned to homeopathy."
Мне вспоминается один случай, который был достаточно для меня драматичный в том плане.
I recall one incident that was quite dramatic, both in terms of the inner tension and excitement that I felt when treating a patient.
Поскольку это был пациент достаточно чиновник высокого ранга, так сказать. И
The patient was not an ordinary one. He was a high-rank official who suffered from acute pneumonia.
у него дома, а в стенах нашей областной клинической больницы города Новосибирска, в котором я живу и работаю,
And was administered to a regional hospital in the city of Novosibirsk. A major consultation, attended by the best doctors of the city, took place in the office of the hospital's head physician.
министр здравоохранения, сидел, естественно, главный врач со своим заместителем по лечебной части. Главный пульмонолог.
There were the Minister of Health, the head physician and his deputy, the chief pneumonologist of the region, and other notable health professionals.
Лечащий врач и говорил, что вот вчера к нам поступил такой-то пациент, такие-то анализы, полисегментарная пневмония.
The physician caring for the patient said that the patient had polysegmental pneumonia.
Который говорит,
The clinical pharmacologist suggested two kinds of antibiotics as treatment. The X-ray specialist showed the X-ray images with the segments of pneumonia clearly visible.
потом все обсуждают, соглашаются с тем, что нужны антибиотики, и в конце концов все взоры обращаются на меня.
They all had a discussion and arrived at the conclusion that the patient had to be treated with antibiotics.
Он отказывается от
Finally, all of them looked at me.
лечить его гомеопатией.
I stood up and said that the patient was quite special. He refused to take antibiotics. Therefore, we would have to use homeopathy.
Которая повышает иммунную систему пациента.
I prescribed him Calcium carbonicum 33 times a day.
7-10 дней.
Homeopaths use this good medicine for treating pneumonia.
Когда все закончилось,
It boosts immunity, and the patient usually recovers within 7 to 10 days.
все были счастливы. Я
10 days later, when the happy patient recovered and was discharged from the hospital,
пневмонией,
I was so exhausted that I went down with pneumonia myself,
как у моего пациента,
and with exactly the same symptoms.
39,5.
The only difference was that I was treated at home and soon recovered without any complications.
And actually, in Greece, in my country, when I came back, I taught only medical doctors. Where in other countries like Germany, like America, I also taught naturopathic doctors and kind of alternative people. But in my country, only medical doctors, because I believe that this is a serious, very serious scientific methodology and has to be studied properly, and then the results are really extraordinary.
Я сам педиатр, вообще-то, в 1982 году закончил Донецкий.
I'm a pediatrician. I graduated from Donetsk Medical Institute in 1982 and then worked at a district hospital in Donetsk region.
И по ходу
I and other two doctors had 7,000 children as our patients. During my medical practice, I began to realize that the antibiotic therapy we very often resorted to when treating inflammatory diseases is not effective enough.
В общем-то, про гомеопатию, может, что-то слышали.
I gradually developed some interest in homeopathy, but unfortunately, there was no place where I could study it in 1982. Back then, books on homeopathy were written in a rather chaotic manner.
Один препарат, мы находили такие же симптомы у другого препарата, и было очень сложно разобраться, каким же
And it was very difficult to understand how to treat patients and how to determine their unique features.
неповторимый портрет.
I met Professor Vithulga 17 years ago, and I was impressed by his charismatic personality because he has the passion to spread classical, real classical homeopathy and to teach his students with the best educational standards. 1995, he created the International Academy of Classical Homeopathy, this building, and he decided to offer to his students a very complete training program in order to explain to them deeply about the theory levels of health and to explain to them how to manage difficult and complex cases. So he created the first complete educational program with Germans in 1995 and the same program in 1996 for Russians. That's why this year we celebrated 20 years of Russians. Until today we have 15,000 medical doctors and homeopathic professionals that they have come here from 62 countries to be taught by Professor Vithoulkas.
Моя жизнь с 96-го года и после.
My life took a very sharp turn in 1996, and I named the last 20 years of my existence the Vithoulkas era. Of course, I could not imagine anything of the kind when I heard his name for the first time in 1995. This happened in the Netherlands during my visit to a homeopath. I asked him about his education, and he mentioned George Vithoulkas. I asked who this man was, and the homeopath replied, "If you don't know Vithoulkas, you don't know homeopathy." So I wrote a letter to George saying that I wanted to be his student, and received an invitation to come and study. At the end of April 1996, a group of 72 people, the first group organized by me, went to learn homeopathy at a 7-day workshop conducted by George. At one point during the workshop, Vithoulkas was analyzing some case from his practice, and I was just sitting there and thinking, I would never be able to do this. After the workshop, George told me that the Academy of Classical Homeopathy was to open a few months later, and they were inviting students to join their 4-year study program. German and Italian-speaking groups were already full, but there was a possibility to teach a Russian-speaking group too. So, in the autumn of the same year, the first group of 125 Russian doctors went to Alonissus to study homeopathy. My studies at the academy changed my career. My approach to the treatment of patients, and of course, made it possible for me to become a professional homeopath. The Russian School of Classical Homeopathy began its existence with this very trip and developed thanks to it. I personally regard Vithoulkas as not just a mentor, a teacher or a friend. George does not only give you knowledge, he teaches people how to study on their own. He teaches them how to inspire people. George lives his life fighting for the rightful position that homeopathy must occupy in the global science, to make all people healthier and happier.
This is true. This year we complete 20 years of cooperation between Russian doctors and the Academy. And I'm very happy to see that more and more Russian doctors are coming here, and more Russian universities are starting adapting this therapy. So my feeling is that homeopathy is appreciated very much by medical doctors of Russia, and that they apply it in a correct way. So this is very encouraging for the health of the people of Russia. I consider that Russian people are quite healthy in their mental, emotional structure, and also physically. So therefore, it appears that the way that they have been treating themselves in Russia, it was a correct way of treating, not over taking chemical drugs and not taking hormones and cortisone and all these strong drugs. So I feel their health is in a generally good condition. Their mind is in a very good state, and they are very studious. Sometimes I am amazed that here we teach 6 hours, 7 hours a day, and they don't miss 1 minute from the teaching. So that shows an enthusiasm and shows a dedication on the part of the doctors.
Ну, мой путь в гомеопатию уже длится 20 лет, больше даже.
It took me over 20 years to work my way into homeopathy, and everything started with a very funny incident. My husband long suffered from severe polynosis that prevented him from living and working happily. I did not know anything about homeopathy at that time and considered this kind of treatment as not serious. But my colleague at work said that she had had polynosis and homeopathy had helped her. The illness did not go away completely, but she felt much better. Anyway, I gave the address of the only homeopathic center in Moscow to my husband. He went there and got an appointment with Dr. Nadezhda Kubasheva. The appointment lasted for 3 hours, and the doctor gave my husband a grain of some sort. He came home carrying a bag of food, because he was allowed to eat anything he wanted. Then threw all his medications out of the cabinet, waved some brochure in my face and said, "Here, I was allowed to do everything, and I'll live a full life from now on." Within a month, I started noticing changes. My husband turned from an impulsive fault-finder into a quite sane man. I should say homeopathy saved my marriage. Then, when it was high time for his polynosis to reveal itself, but it never happened, my brain of a medical professional could not comprehend this. How could it be? Such things are impossible. Then I decided to read the brochure. I found it. Written by George Vitolkas and named Homeopathy, the Medical Science of a New Man. This small brochure virtually created a revolution in my brain. There occurred a total paradigm shift.
20 лет назад у нас был трагический случай в семье, и мой муж серьезно заболел.
A tragic thing happened in our family 20 years ago. My husband became seriously ill.
Он похудел на 10 килограмм, и у него начались...
He suffered from high fever and diarrhea for 2 months. He lost 10 kilos and had herpes on all mucous membranes. We were desperate. Some more time without positive changes, and we would have taken him to intensive care. At this point, we got an appointment with a homeopath, who prescribed my husband just 1 dose of Lycopodium 200. And my husband immediately felt better. The temperature dropped on the very next day, and the weakness in the limbs has gone. It happened 20 years ago. He is still healthy. And of course, we are most happy that everything ended in this way.
Well, as all Russian doctors that come here, they know very well how much I like them and how much I appreciate their efforts for learning homeopathy and for spreading homeopathy in Russia.
Джордж нам говорил, я вас научу.
George told us, "I'll teach you. You'll be able to do it. Then you'll go back home, start working there." But whether homeopathy will take root in Russia and in what form it will exist there, it will depend on you. Anyway, in 2010, we finally made up our minds, braced ourselves, created the clinic and gave it a loud name, Hahnemann Clinic of Classical Homeopathy. There were only 5 of us back then. Now there are 20. And we grow, we learn. The most important thing is that George practically joined us all, because we think like he does, we argue like he does, and we hear and understand each other, because we are in the same system. Irina Kuzmina, our head physician, is Vitulkas's student from the first way of his followers, as I call it. She used to teach at the Russian branch, and she continues to teach us here, at our clinic. We grow thanks to her efforts and our enthusiasm, and can even boast of having earned a good name in the medical community within the last few years. I first met George Vitulkas 20 years ago, when the first group of Russian doctors got to see George Vitulkas Academy on this wonderful Greek island of Alonissos. That meeting changed my personal and professional life entirely. It was 1996, and very few people in Russia knew about homeopathy. The sadly famous decree of 1968, authored by Petrovsky, the Soviet Minister of Health, thwarted the development of homeopathy as a science and the therapeutic method. Therefore, I wasn't the only one who found that meeting with George life-changing. George is a wonderful person. I have known him for over 20 years, and must say that he has always been busy both training doctors and encouraging their spiritual development. That is why many of us rightfully regard him as their father, in the broadest sense of the word. Therefore, George is the father of classical homeopathy in Russia. His participation helped revive Russian classical homeopathy and promote it to the level of science. When we got our diplomas in 2000, I remember him saying, "I did what I was supposed to. I gave you a lot of knowledge. Now your main task is to spread this knowledge in Russia." A large number of qualified homeopaths were trained during these 20 years. Many homeopathic centers were opened. The level of homeopathic services went up, as witnessed by thousands of patients we made healthy. We have earned respect and recognition from our allopath colleagues, and now they send their patients to us for help. A major event will be held this upcoming October, the first Eurasian Congress of Homeopathic Medicine, and we hope to be worthy representatives of Russian homeopathy at this event.
So the friendship, I think, between Greece and Russia is very important in many levels, but especially on the level of medicine. I think that Russian doctors are appreciating very much this natural method of healing, and they are very humanistic people. They are very caring about people and their health. So they have appreciated very much this kind of healing method. And my wish will be that always there is going to be a connection and a good relation between Greece and Russia.
In 2010, he decided to organize an e-learning online program because some people wanted to come here, but they couldn't afford this trip.
получаем очень много знаний, очень большое удовольствие, большой энергетический прилив.
Studying homeopathy gives us extensive knowledge, great pleasure and a rush of energy. It is an absolutely different worldview. Having studied classical homeopathy, now I see that I can help those seriously ill people I could not help before. I see the effect from both the isolated homeopathic treatment and the combination of allopathic and homeopathic methods. Being a physician, I believe that homeopathy is the future of medical treatment. I discovered this school, got to know these people, and realized that homeopathy is both art and science. It does not tolerate compromises. Because homeopathy is a gift that was given to mankind in order to help it overcome the toughest situation when mankind gets sick and steps onto the path of degradation.
Because there is a big battle to try to change the way that medicine is at the moment and try to shift it towards a more humane medicine. The medicine which exists today is impersonal, is not individualistic, it's not humanistic medicine. It's a mechanistic medicine.
I can't find words to express what I felt after the first semester of my studies. My brain literally started functioning in a totally different way. The way the professor teaches, the way he instructs how to treat patients is absolutely brilliant. I'm very happy that being a fairly young doctor, I got trained at the academy and now have the opportunity to use this knowledge, pass it to others and help my patients. I was forced to turn to homeopathy by my life circumstances. I practically lost my ability to move. My relatives told me where to go and how to get homeopathic treatment. And I could say I was reborn. I can stand on my own feet now. I am alive, healthy and active. And I feel joy from being able to experience the great sides of life. Having completed my studies a while ago, now, whenever I come to attend workshops at the academy, I always thank my teachers for the fact that we can change people's lives thanks to the knowledge acquired at the academy. I got introduced to homeopathy by pure chance. 13 years ago, I suffered from severe headaches and was prescribed certain medicine by a doctor. The treatment, however, did not bring any improvement. I found out about a local homeopathic pharmacy where I could consult homeopaths for free. I had no choice but to turn to them and try this method of treatment. Before the consultation, I just stayed in bed and thought I was dying. My head ached so much that I could not eat or drink or speak. I had a small child, but I did not have any strength to attend to him. I could only take my painkillers. Having started homeopathic treatment, I felt much better, and finally could call myself a healthy person. Over the years, I became more and more confident that this kind of treatment suits me best. There was a time in my medical practice when I worked as a family doctor at an ordinary clinic, while still practicing homeopathy. I realized that if I did not know any homeopathic methods of treatment and simply treated people by traditional methods, I would watch their state of health get worse year after year up to their complete helplessness. It is very sad when you try to help people to cure them, but simply watch them pass away. Homeopathy is some kind of a magic wand. It cannot cure all diseases or make everyone perfectly healthy, of course. But it can actually make human body stronger and thwart pathological processes, either partially or completely. This brings hope and joy to the soul and inspires medical optimism. We helped surgeons remove tumors and unfortunately had to refuse patients quite often because their bodies were too frail and worn out. They simply would not recover after such traumatic operations. The first time when I was able to help my patient by using homeopathy was when I treated a 74-year-old woman who had a tumor in her liver. Almost one-third of her liver, the left lobe, had to be removed. But unfortunately, her age and her weak heart made it impossible. She asked me what she should do, and I suggested homeopathic treatment. Fortunately, she turned out to be a very easy patient, and I managed to cure her within half a year. She is still alive and enjoys life with no surgeries in it. And now we have a whole army of homeopaths who completed their training at the Academy of Elonices. Just think, since each doctor has about 100 of patients, we can say that we are practically making the whole nation healthier.
What I wish to the Russian homeopaths, there is one wish, real wish for them and for other doctors, that they become better than me. I think, not that I am something special, but I think I have a good level of knowledge. So if they become better than me, the world will be saved.